This is a special meeting with PMR Healthcare. Today's date is November 2nd, 2023. The time is 9:02, and I am calling this meeting to order. In attendance are Commissioners Brooks and Matari. Are there any changes to the agenda? Not heard. Any public comment? None heard. All right, let's get into business. This is a PMR Healthcare request for doctor stipend. Do we need to go into executive session?
Well, if we're going to talk about credentials or any of that, I think we should, whatever the board would.
Well, are we going to talk about this doctor specifically? Will we be able to? Todd?
What are your questions? Let's go down that path. Yes, we can address this directly. I just want to make sure that we understand what the questions are so that we are able to answer those concisely and make sure you have the information you need.
Yeah, I think the big thing is just the fact that, you know, there's a lot of moving pieces and they're not quite yet set in stone. One of them is getting this location, assuming that the location is actually delivered on time, which I've seen these things before where there's typically, it's not uncommon, I should say, for there to be a delay in delivery, either through vacating the existing tenant who needs an extra month or two, or some unforeseen thing that needs to happen in order to prepare the property for the new tenant, which in this case could be us. Because from my understanding, we have not inked the deal yet.
No.
We're in the process of.
Yes, we
working.
countered. We countered back to the landlord, and that went out yesterday.
Yes, and so here we are being presented with having to have to lock in a doctor at a tidy sum with less certainty about an actual start date, even though we have an idea of what that start date would be. It's still a lot of money. And so I think the idea was for us to.
So if you allow me, let's kind of step back to how we kind of ended up in this place. That might explain why we're here. In mid-July, there was, the vote was made and things were decided to go ahead and move ahead with the clinic and the contract so that we could begin services. And at that time, the contract was generated, and it was generated on both sides agreeing that a 1/1 start date was a logical start date to have. And we began operating to that standard, understanding that on our side, our requirement is to make sure we have staff, that we have equipment, supplies, and everything ready to go, procedures, everything in place so that we do a 1/1 start. And on the opposite side, we also had to wait and make sure we got the space. And we went through a phase there where the space that we originally were going to ascertain or hoped to ascertain, the county did, was unavailable in the last moment. So I'm confident that everybody's aware of that. So it put us all in a strange kind of position. While this was going on, though, we were still operating to the standard that we needed to have a practitioner on 1/1. So we did our due diligence and our process and went ahead and found a couple of different positions, but this one really stood out and started to negotiate on behalf to get this done so that we could have it happen. So as that first space was lost, this other space came in, and there was an opportunity at one point that was thought by parties involved, that it might be available earlier than the 3/1 date that it now is. And so during that entire process, we have been keeping, fostering, and foundering with this particular position the opportunity of this job being available. And what we find ourselves now as is that when we finally figure out that the hard date for the space is now 3/1, the challenge that we face is that this doctor, like any doctor in the market with a 55,000 provider shortage, can take very much any job they want. So we see that we have an opportunity with a doctor that fits very much with the culture of the county. As a, they come in front of the U.S. military, comes from a captive patient base, which is a similar type system that we're talking about, has worked very much with the police, the fire, and these different groups that we know we're talking about here, as well as the families of those individuals. And we just find ourselves kind of in this position where, effective on 1/1 pursuant to the contract, there is a billing amount that's due for the full amount. We know that that's not a practical answer to this, to this problem. So what we come back and said is, how do we keep this doctor so we don't lose this doctor during a crisis time with those particular practitioners and still meet all the needs of the county while not necessarily, executing on the original agreement of saying that it's going to be the $100,000 a month. So I just want to kind of make sure we're all on the same page, or if there's questions about that before we kind of proceed.
Yeah. Do you have any questions?
Well, I would appreciate it when people talk today, if they address, say who they are. I mean, because I don't know everybody's voice. And
Okay. Is this Bruce? Is this Bruce? I'm speaking. This is Craig Marcroft.
Okay, this is Bill Brooks. Yeah, I just like to.
Bill, my apologies.
That's all right. I just like to know who everybody is, and for our note taker over here.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah.
Craig is the CEO of PMR Healthcare.
Right.
Yeah, I think we've met before. So I think the challenge here is that getting set up is always the hard part. The beginnings and endings are always the hard part. And the fact is we never had the space, even though we wanted to engage PMR. And so we obviously didn't wait to try to find space. The first space was, it fell through. So we're working on this second space. We still don't have it locked in. And so now we're being asked to lock in a doctor without having the space locked in. And that's just the only concern. Look, if we have to revisit the term to start when we actually start this process, because even on day one, I don't even think we're going to have that many employees that would be switched over. Do we have any idea of how many people would be switched over?
Well, employees won't have to switch over. They have the option. The minute we say the clinic's open, staff can start scheduling themselves for appointments, or I'm not sure if we would start them even earlier and saying we'll have an open day where a physician's available and the clinic's open, that they get to schedule in advance. I'm not sure about that. I'd have to defer to PMR.
Yeah, but I think the main question was the fact, and I'm sorry, Craig, just one quick thought here. I think the main question is the fact that we're being asked to make a decision on a doctor that we don't know anything about except just the little bit that was put on this flyer. And was he the only person that you spoke to? Was he the only person who would fit this qualification? Is he aware of this location? And is he of the type that if we say we want to wait and not start until 3/1, that he's just going to say, forget about Coeur d'Alene, it's not worth it? Or just like to understand a little bit more about who this person is, because we're looking at a significant amount of money just to lock him in until we actually open. That has a big question mark. I mean, we have an idea, but we don't have a deal yet.
Okay. We can approach this that way, and I'm happy to do so. But we actually we do actually have a contract that we are working to. So from our side, we are focused on adhering to the original contract that we have. Understanding that it took a long time to get that in place on both sides. So we're still trying to look at that. Now, taking the step down, no, this is not the only doctor that we looked at. We started recruiting for this doctor earlier this year, probably around May, when we started to understand that we were getting closer on this agreement. In July, we went to a hard recruitment, meaning we involved 6 different recruiters and several different people internally to start going after that. We went through and reviewed the cases of multiple doctors that did apply, some of which were immediately dismissed, some of which we're able to maintain through the process. But this particular doctor stood out because of his experience and his capability set. And through the course of process of review, as you can imagine, our interview process is pretty extensive and involves usually a half dozen to a dozen interviews minimum before we get to a point where we make a decision. So with this doctor, the other thing I will say is that while I understand your desire to have, and you're going to have an intimate relationship with this doctor if you choose that doctor to be yours as well, we also have to be very careful in how we present those clients, our clients to our physicians, because we have to be careful not to include you in a quote-unquote hiring practice or an HR practice. It could expose you, if you are part of the process that goes along and chooses this doctor, it could expose you to some level of liability in the future if for some reason something were to go in a direction that is not typical. So we want to be careful. Typically, in this case, what we've done in the last, nearly 20 years of operation is we go through the process, we do all of our due diligence, we find the doctors, we then make them offers, and then at a certain point in time, we do a meet and greet. It's not an interview process, it's a meet and greet, so that everybody has a chance to at least meet that doctor. But we have an extensive set of criteria that we go through to make sure that these doctors fit not only PMR's culture and making certain that they understand that how we do medicine, how we work within a clinic space, but also the culture of our clients. In this case, the county. Now, with regards to your comment or question about is he going to give up on Coeur d'Alene, no, he's not. He spent the last several months trying to decide where he wanted to settle. Coeur d'Alene is an opportune location. But let's be very clear. Coeur d'Alene also has a lot of other opportunities for doctors if they would want to take them. And while we pay handsomely, currently there are some other healthcare systems in the community that are absolutely doing anything possible to attract doctors. So in the case of this doctor, he very much wants to work within these kind of confines, what we do and how we treat patients and how he's able to really have that intimate relationship with his patient base. However, at the end of the day, he's also a human who needs a job to support himself, his family, and to have benefits and all these other, ideals covered. And there are many other opportunities just in that marketplace. So we're competing against those other networks and those other practitioner locations to try to maintain them. So I don't believe that this is anyone or him trying to hold anything over anyone's head. He's just simply said, I need to have a decision made by the early part here of November because I'm talking about, moving my family and into this new location, putting down roots and starting my life. And he's just recently retired from the U.S. military.
Okay. So is it the lack of certainty or is it the gap in income that is the main driver, would you say?
I would say it's a combination of three things. I think it is a little bit the lack of certainty because with this big physician shortage, he can go anywhere he wants. He's age resistant to the end. He's got everything going for him with that and all the experience. So he has that. So it's a little bit of wages. He doesn't want to give that up and may not have an interim position to hold him. But, and he wants to get his family settled because they have been, for lack of a better term, unsettled for most of his life. As his children have aged, he's been in the service, they travel a lot, so he's ready to get those things done. And, you start to look at then the other big element for him is benefits. As he's left the U.S. military, his benefits have now gone away, which is not something that when you're in the service that you're accustomed to really addressing, but it's become a much bigger issue. And he needs to get settled in so that he has benefits and is covered.
Mm. Just out of curiosity, let's say he moves here and 3 months into it, the cloudy, overcast days that go on for well past a week, the wife doesn't want to live here and she doesn't want to leave. What does that mean to the county and PMR?
Well, a couple of things. He has a commitment to us for a period time. Now, we cannot make that indefinite, and Idaho is a right to work state, so we have to be realistic with ourselves. However, he does have a commitment to us of a certain period of time that I feel he will honor because he does seem to be a quite honorable person.
Yeah.
So that part we can address, and if it does happen, we will be very much with the county having conversations, letting you know that there's going to be a transition. That transition would not be just a jolting change. It would be a transition over time. We work very diligently to make sure of that.
Yeah.
We also work with our, during the interview process, we ask a lot of questions, and one of the things I can say is that he did do work in Mountain Home, just outside of Boise. He did a lot of work there for the Air Force for a while. So I do think he's a little bit more familiar with the area. Plus, he studied in Utah. And so he does have quite a bit of experience in that kind of regional area. And he also spent a large part of his career in Alaska. So, quite frankly, compared to he was there for many years of his career. So I think that he understands clearly. He's been there. He understands where he's going, why he's going there, and what to expect. And he's excited about it. He's very excited about this type of work. The kind of captive patient rate is unique to most doctors who have an open door. The ability to really focus on a stuff that you can aggressively treat and become very intimately involved with is something that it takes a very specific type of doctor, and he is that, and that's part of what really appeals to us.
Yeah.
And him as well.
Yeah.
Is he retired from the military?
I do not think he technically retired. They're giving some level of early retirement right now, but he was not in for his full 20.
Okay, and
I think the conversation has been very, very devastating with HR matters. It's difficult sometimes to ask this, but my impression as also a veteran, I believe he went in through the GI Bill, went to school, and then served his tours and terms, and added a little to that in order to finish out. But that's my understanding.
and what rank did he leave the service at?
To be honest, I apologize, but as I'm at the airport, I don't have his file in front of me, and I did not ask.
Okay, and is he an MD or a DO?
He's a DO, which also happens to work very well with our nature of medicine. DOs have osteopathic doctors have spent a lot more time working with patients at a much more intimate level, if you will, one-on-one. They have a tendency to do their training to spend more time with patients than MDs, just historically. Not that I'm saying anything against MDs. We have great ones that work with us.
Can you kind of describe the differences between the two? I'm just not familiar with it.
The easiest way it was ever described to me is that both of them go through the same medical kind of process. DOs have a second tier set of classes they go through that have more of a holistic approach that is included with them. So, medical doctors, MDs, have a tendency to be more direct, stuck into the technical side of medicine. DOs do the technical, but also have an additional side that goes into more of a holistic.
Okay.
And Bruce, I'd probably also offer this as Todd speaking, but there's also an added emphasis on preventative care by a doctor osteopath.
Okay. Thank you. I guess I just have one other question, and then, if we were to lock this person in, but have their start date officially on February 1, would they be amenable to that?
They have, at this point, he has been fairly adamant about wanting to be gainfully employed on 1/1.
Okay.
I mean, I'm willing, as your partner in this, I'm willing to go, and ask the question. I mean, of course we can ask, and try to be very gentle with it and how we go through that process and see if we can get that done. But as of this moment, if I had to answer that question directly, the answer would be he has been very, very straightforward about a 1-1 beginning. It has a lot.
Greg, we lost you there a second.
Am I still here?
Yeah, you're
We
back.
lost you there for a moment.
Oh, my apologies. I'm not sure where I lost out, but all I was saying was at this moment, he's very adamant about a 1-1, and it has a lot to do with his benefits as well as wages, but benefits seem to be the bigger issue. And so as your partner, as I say, I'm happy to go ask the question on the 2-1, but if I had to answer it right now today, absolutely, I would have to stick with his comment today of 1-1.
Okay, and when did he leave the military, approximately?
A few months ago, probably within this year.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Brooks?
I don't have any further questions.
Yeah, I think at this point, we certainly appreciate your time, and obviously the board has to make a decision sooner rather than later. So I guess, go ahead.
Yeah, if I may, this is Craig again. All I would say is, I'm not trying to do, and we're not trying to do any cram-downs on people. We're just trying to be realistic with where we are at. Recruiting for any position right now, as I'm sure you all know, having a lot of jobs that you have, is a challenge. There are certain areas where it's a bigger challenge, and I know you're very familiar with one of those, which is law enforcement. Law enforcement and medicine are neck and neck right now for how difficult it is to find good, qualified people who you can get in a timely fashion. So when we talk about this is just trying to be realistic to the situation that we're all faced with. And what we're trying to avoid here, when we do find an excellent doctor that's going to match, we're trying to figure out whatever we can do to make that work for all parties. Because if not, the risk on the other side is great that we may not find that candidate again in a short period of time. And we're just wanting to make for certain that we don't end up, getting this space on 3-1 and then having it, finished and completed and ready, and then all of us sitting there with nothing. And now we're at 6-1 or 7-1 to start. That's what our intent is. We're trying to make sure that the first available appointment time that could be open, and the comment made earlier is correct. We will start scheduling these appointments a month or two in advance. We will start putting the marketing together. The marketing packages will start going out the minute we all come to this agreement, the minute we know that the space has been adhered and will be available to us. We'll start marketing to all of the employees, all their families, to let them know it's coming, to build that excitement. And this doctor, while he may not be in a clinic for you, if we do bring him in, will be in our clinic in Coeur d'Alene working and training and getting to know all of our systems so that is an even smoother start out than what it might be if he started literally on the first day of the clinic open.
Yeah,
Hey, this is Scott, and I was just going to add a couple comments in that regard. Having gone through this process, start to finish, if there was one thing we could have done and tried to figure out a unique way to do this with the other experience, is to get the doctor in advance so that they can go through some more detailed training on systems and protocol before actually seeing patients. The way this business model is designed is they try to line up the provider and the facility on the exact same day. And Bruce, you used the phrase "start back to line," and that's exactly it. But really, when the provider and the facility line up on that date, and it's ready, set, go. Okay, the doctor's seeing patients, and he's also learning systems and protocols. If we could have had a month or more of advance, if that situation would have existed, like it potentially could here, I would have loved that, because that would have minimized much of the bumps that we did experience. Now, things are working out great, and to your question about how many people will they be seeing on day one, the other client, it's been busting out the seams from day one on patients. working out incredibly well. The ratings from the patient satisfaction are off the charts well. However, it could have been perfected if we would have had a little more advanced time with staff and training. So.
You know, I understand all of the everything of what you're saying. I mean, there is a little different side here, and then there's some intangibles that have to be kind of evaluated. But you know, empty space for a month or two is a heck of a lot cheaper than hiring this doctor and hoping we have space open up on the date that we have it. So, and the other side of it is that, you know, you can't miss something you haven't had yet. So we don't have people who we're already, you know, engaged with PMR. They're already seeing a doctor, and now that doctor's gone, it's vacant, and we're trying to fill it as fast as we can because no one can see a doctor. It's really a matter of once we get this thing started and going, it will ramp up, and I'm sure it will be quick, and it'll be a great thing. But again, there's still a little bit of a business decision here. But I certainly appreciate all the points you're making, and they're valid.
Bruce, this is Todd. One thing, because I hear that the logic on the business model is one thing to keep in mind that I have seen over the decade plus of being in the on-site employer clinic space is the impact of a doctor, an osteopath, and the impact that they could have on ongoing healthcare costs for the county. You know, I think we really believe we have a very strong candidate here that matches the culture, but some of that upfront investment can truly, the impact I believe this doctor could have on that ongoing cost down the road, it may be more than worth that risk. And I see that some perspective from this side, but I just wanted to put that out there. I think this doctor may very well impact that healthcare cost much greater.
Yeah, and I agree with you. It's just that it's a little less tangible, you know, and so that's why having this conversation kind of helps work through that. But I understand. I mean, especially on the staffing side, you know, I'd like to think we bought into a system and not necessarily people, but I understand people make a big difference within the system. So, but I totally understand. Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? No? Todd, Craig, Scott, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Hey, thank you. Any more questions? If any more questions arise, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Fair enough. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
You're welcome. Thanks, Sylvia.
What do you think?
Good.
I mean, I just hate the idea of spending that much money on a date uncertain without.
I hate the idea of losing another one, whether it's the provider or whether it's the space.
Yeah. I mean, we don't even have the space right now.
I know, it's a risk. On both, for both parts of the equation. They both have to come together. That's the trick.
The space was looking favorable because we offered initially and then they countered. And then we, after PMR and Scott got to do an extensive tour of the facility, they were concerned about the x-ray room. And so we put that condition in our counter offer. It's not the price or any of that. It's more about get that x-ray room cleaned out and take care of if there's any contaminants in there.
You know, I saw something related to that, which I guess I'm assuming we can talk about a little bit because it has to do with the decision for this doctor. But with respect to the document that was sent to Commissioner Brooks and myself, I couldn't understand why the numbers were going up. The red line numbers were smaller than the new numbers.
Well, the red numbers were our initial offer. And they came back with, instead of a 2% increase, a 3% in rent. And monthly. So the red,
So did we offer less than what they were asking?
yes. Yeah, we did come in less than they were offering, and then, they came back and offered their rate.
All right, well, I don't have anything else.
I think we've covered everything we can cover now. We
Any,
just need to be on top of it as it goes along.
yeah, any, public comment? Well, I'm sorry. So-
Sorry, just any next steps, any direction for me to go back with the PMR team and Scott Alliance?
Well, I mean, we'll just have to put this on, I guess, the next business meeting.
Okay. That's when you'll, do you want, should I reach out to him and ask him to pursue, have the discussion with the doctor about the February 1, or do you feel like you got your answer?
I feel like we got the answer.
Well, I take it that the contract then starts on January 1 and ends December 31, 3 years later. Okay,
So I'll put it on the business meeting agenda for a decision? Or, because you want to think about it a little bit, or you
Well-
can take action today if you choose.
I'm fine with the business meeting.
I think the business, we all.
All of us should be there.
Okay, all right, I'll add it to the business meeting and we'll go from there. Okay, thank you so much.
Any public comment?
We have another location if this one doesn't go through. We're still 6 months out on that.
9/20, we can get in March 1st. They're saying, all we'd have to do is go in and just freshen it up. A lot of the work that we would have had to do with the previous one, we won't have to do with this one, which is good. And then, the big project, and they can do this while the clinic's functioning, is opening from the X-ray room into the clinic area. And they'll be able to do that and still see clients.
The, what's the, what date is the existing tenant leaving?
They are saying we can't get in until March 1st.
That wasn't my question.
Yeah, I don't know what date they'll be vacated the day we take possession, March 1st. Because we
No, I
tried to
know
get
that.
in January,
But
February,
if
but
they're leaving February 28th, then that doesn't really, there's no time for anything.
No.
That means we're not gonna, taking possession and moving in are two different things.
right, we would take possession, then Greg and his team or a contractor would get in and do the painting and start
Yeah, see,
doing
that's,
that process. They estimated about 2 to 3 weeks for just this minimal work that would be
I know.
needed.
So what it
But,
really
yeah.
means is it's a 4/1 start date, so we're actually paying for 3 months for this doctor. That's what my concern is. It gets
Mhm,
positioned as a 2-month payment, but it's not. You're not moving in on 3/1.
No, we're not.
It's possession 3/1.
Yes, correct.
Okay. I've done this, and
Yeah,
I've had tenants go,
absolutely.
we need an extra month, and I couldn't move in. Then I gotta go to my landlord and say, I need to stay another month. You know, those kinds of things.
Okay.
So. Public comment? None? Okay, well, it's 9:35, meeting adjourned. Thank you.